Hi folks, and welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. So over the holidays, which seems like a lifetime ago now, I asked my American friends to suggest some patterns that we might be missing out on here in the UK and indeed Europe. So what you see in the vise is my rendition of Lance Egan's Tungsten Surveyor. So without further ado, let's get into it. The hook in the vise then is a Hanak H470 barbless hook. This one's at size 10, it's on a medium wire and it's in black nickel. It's the jig wave hook. Now I believe Lance uses the 400, but unfortunately I'm completely out of that type of hook, so I'm going to use this as a substitute. Again, I'm using a different thread. I'm using the Semperfli 6/0 classic waxed red thread. I believe the original version was done with UTC, which I don't have. So before I dress up my thread to the hook shank, I'm going to add a little bit of weight. Now I've got this lead-free wire. It's from Semperfli. It's 0.5 millimeters, and I want to get roughly half a dozen wraps onto the shank of the hook. Now with lead you can just use your nails, but this stuff's a little tougher, so I'm using some old scissors. Make sure you use old scissors, folks. Don't be using your fancy C&F or your copter scissors on this, or you will blunt them, and unfortunately I'm not insured. So make sure you get yourself a nice set of old scissors. Now push up the wire as far as you can to make sure your bead's seated correctly, and then after you've added some wax to your thread, you can catch your thread on and then just push it a little bit further up. Once you're happy that you've got that in place, you can then come over your wire and lock it all down. Now I'm just going to use my thumbnail to try and just guide that a bit better. Don't worry, you're not missing out on anything. I'm just flattening that down a bit. Then I want to build out that dip that I've got there. Shouldn't take long. And I'm fairly happy with that. Now, one of the things Lance uses in his tying of this fly is pheasant tail. Now, I'm not a big fan of this, but I'm going to do it to stay true to the pattern. And I've got an olive one here. It's been dyed olive, and I want to take at least half a dozen, maybe more. I'm going to take it off at a 90-degree angle from the stem, and then I can dress that up. And I only want a short tail, maybe about a third of the length of the body. I'll just catch that in, and I don't particularly want to take it past where I've tied in my extra weight at the front here. Then I can just remove that. Now, although I'm tying this on a size 10, this is a pattern that'll work down through all the way to 16s, I would think. So why do I not like using pheasant tail? Might as well discuss that now. So when the fly's tumbling along the river bottom, pheasant tail's a very brittle material, and it's often smashed up, and you lose it fairly quickly. Even after a couple of fish it will go. So I like to use things like cock hackle fibres, coq de Leon. They're just a lot more robust and they'll last a lot longer. Next I'm going to add in my rib, and I'm using some silver wire. It's at 0.1 millimeters, and I'm just going to catch that in again. I don't want to catch it up the wire body. I want to keep that nice taper going on. And every chance I get while I'm up that neck of the woods, I just work that taper a little more. Now, I've got that to pretty much how I want it. Now, Lance used a sort of scud dubbing, a rainbow mix. I'm going to use some of this Troutstalker's dubbing. Now, he calls it Bug's Life hybrid dubbing, and it's a mix between natural fibres and synthetic fibres, but it gives me that sort of, if I can just show this up to the camera, it gives me that translucent look that the original Surveyor gets. I don't want to put too much on. The abdomen is actually quite thin, so I'm just going to put on a little bit at a time. Make sure it's dubbed hard onto my thread, like so. Now, if you're watching here in the UK, you may not know who Lance Egan is, but in America, he's quite a big deal. He's been in the American World Team, and he's a very successful competition angler, as well as fly tyer, guide, and I believe he makes movies now. But so quite a well-known individual in stateside, maybe not so much here. So I've got my abdomen in place, and next I'm going to bring my rib over the top, and this just gives me that little segmentation in the abdomen, as well as a little glint of silver, which I'm sure won't do the fly any harm. So I've caught it in with a couple of turns in front, then I can simply twist the wire rib away. And before I go on to the next stage, I'm just going to add a little bit of wax. Now, the thorax cover, I'm going to use some Semperfli mirror tinsel. This one's at 0.8 millimeters. I have got a little bit off here. It just pays to wax up your thread before you try inserting this, because it is quite slippy, and if you've not got wax on, you can end up falling foul of pulling it out of place. So I've got that coming straight off the back, which is great, and I'm going to go back to my hybrid Bugs Life dubbing, and this time I'm going to use a little bit more dubbing, and I'm not going to be as hard on the dub. So I'll just keep it loose, because I am going to tease this out. I think with these type of flies, the scruffier they are, the better they fish. Of course, it does come down a lot to confidence in the fly, and I have watched Lance's video on this, and he's got great faith in it, and he fishes it on his dropper, which is always a big thing. If you've got faith in a fly, generally it will catch a fish. So I've pulled my thorax cover over the top of the slotted bead, and I'm just getting a couple of turns to hold that into place. Then I'm going to bend that thorax cover back out the way and just get a couple of turns in front. I can then come in with my scissors and remove my excess. Now, the next thing to do is we're going to build a little red collar. It's common amongst pheasant tails, hare's ears, that people build in hot spots to their nymphs. And on this occasion we're going to put this hot collar in. Doesn't need to be massive, just needs to stand out a little. Now, to finish this off, I'm going to use some UV resin, and this saves me having to go in afterwards with super glue or varnish or whatever you would normally finish the fly off with. Oops, just missed my whip finisher there. So 3 turns of the whip finish. Then I can remove my thread. And if you were using varnish or super glue, you would have to, of course, wait for it to dry. I'll just give it a quick zap with the torch, and that'll be good to go. Now, before we call it a day with a fly, as I mentioned earlier, it is a scruffy pattern, and I want to just tease out this thorax material here. And I don't know how well it will show up on the camera, but this dubbing is just superb for this pattern. It's got a lot of translucency, there's reds, there's blues, just a whole lot going on with it. Just going to work away at that. Now, I don't want it having too long a tail, so I'm going to come in from the bottom and just remove any of the really long fibres. And there we have my rendition of Lance Egan's Surveyor pattern. You can see the little flash of the thorax cover on top, and you can just tell straight away this is going to be an effective pattern. So thanks again to my American friends for suggesting the pattern. I'm sorry it's not exactly right, but it's near as damn it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.